Also will give you a good perspective and good value for the journey to our place. We normally do it about the same time every year, like the last couple of years. It just so happened that Uday Marty, Southeast Asia Director, based in Singapore, was in town, and he travels quite a bit across all of these countries. And if you look at it, and you talk about it as well, all of these countries are hotbed for innovation. So one was talking about 2012 and 2013 predictions of Malaysia, but we thought it would be a very good context for you to understand the same premise from a Southeast Asia point of view as well, where Malaysia is one of the important countries. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Uday Marty, and he will take you through some of his thoughts, also talk about the innovations and his views of 2013, and then I'll come back to provide local context. Uday, over to you.
Thanks for questions. Okay, thanks for having us. It's already glad you're here. I'm a pretty informal guy, so feel free to ask questions during, after, before the presentation, and any point in time. So I think we're going to talk about 2012 and what we've seen, some of the big emerging trends happening in the market in front of us, and then talk about what we see coming in 2013. And this is based on our understanding of what's being worked on, sometimes behind closed doors, based on our research in consumer behavior, our research in enterprise behavior, buying behavior. So it should be a good conversation. It should be fairly holistic. And I think Prakash is going to talk about specific Malaysia items as well. Yeah. So let's go to the next slide. Our mission is to create and extend technologies to enrich people's lives worldwide. And this is very, very true because just last week I came from Vietnam, from Yangon, and we just introduced our starting of operations in Myanmar as sanctions have been lifted, I suppose, or I don't know what the technical. It wasn't exactly lifted; it was something else, relaxed. And as we look at a country like Myanmar and Southeast Asia, the ability for us to create and extend these technologies into these new markets is amazing. And that's true in each of our markets to a different degree. Myanmar, the needs are different. Malaysia, the needs are different. Thailand, the needs are different. India, the needs are different. But this mission statement really holds true for us in our markets. Whether you look at consumers, whether you look at broadband penetration, whether you look at education, whether you look at SMBs and use of technology, or big enterprise. And this mission really holds true for us. Because we do want to enrich the lives of every person on earth, and specifically in Southeast Asia for our people, right? Next slide. So when we look at 2012, we did a few things. One, from a server standpoint, we released our new lineup for E5 and E7 processors. Right? And that's driven a huge amount of refresh in the enterprise space. We've been very, very excited with the progress we've made in this area, as our customers have been. We introduced our first 22 nanometer 3D tri-gate transistors. Manufacturing is becoming more and more difficult as we go from one generation to the next. And I think we are seeing us, India, really separate ourselves from the competition. Right? And this has been happening ever since we moved to 45 nanometer with high-k gate, then to 32, and now to 22. And we are producing our Ivy Bridge, our third gen core processors on this 22 nanometer technology. And it's been great so far. And we're going to continue to ramp production on this field. We launched our first phone in APAC, in Asia Pacific. Right? This was the first time that I can remember that we've done a product launch in an emerging market first. Our first phone was in India, not in the US, not in Western Europe, but in India. And with a local brand called Lava. And I think it is a recognition of the fact that there is a lot more happening in the emerging markets going forward than previous. This would have never happened 10, 15 years back, where the first product from Intel, from a system standpoint, was actually released in an emerging market. Since then, we've released other phones. We'll talk about it a little bit in the future. And lastly, we've launched our 2760 V-Series Atom processor. This is also codenamed Clover Trail. It supports Windows. And I think some of you have probably already seen products with Z2760 with Windows 8. Yeah, how many people have seen Clover Trail? Nobody's seen it. Well, alright, you will see it today. Right? It's there. So it should be interesting. I think what we're able to do is provide leading edge process technology, 32 nanometer, right? The goodness of which is coming through from a product standpoint, which is then being realized via Windows 8 and is being delivered to consumers on very innovative form factors. So innovation from the manufacturing all the way through to the consumer is coming through on this pipeline. Very, very well, by the way. Next slide. Increasingly going forward, we're talking about spanning the entire spectrum, right? Historically we've supplied CPUs for desktops, then we've evolved into the notebook space, then we've come up with categories like netbooks, of course now with ultrabooks, phones are in market. We're going to have tablets very soon on Android as well. We have tablets on Windows already. So, and the data center of course, right? So when you look at the entire spectrum of consumer devices, I think you're going to find Intel inside. I think my number one prediction for Southeast Asia really is that we will see Intel inside all of these devices in the coming year, which has not happened for us ever before. So it's a very exciting year for us. From phones all the way to data center, we'll have Intel inside. No question. Big year for us. And we're going to provide that across two different product families, the core product family and the Atom product family. So when you look at next generation Atom cores, this is not the same old Atom core from before, right? This is really good performance with great battery life. Right? So this is driving all-day computing type usage models for smartphones, for tablets, and increasingly for these convertible type devices. Right? Very thin and light, great compute power, great performance, but all-day standby, all-day battery life type devices. And then the core, which is full PC experience, but continuing to drive better and better battery life. So we're going to come at this from two angles. Okay. Let's look at ultrabooks. We have over 70 SKUs in market today. Right? That is as of today. Last year, this time, we didn't have much at all. But this year, we have 70. From a design and pipeline standpoint, which is our partners in Taiwan, the ODMs, the MNCs worldwide, we have about 120 designs in the pipeline right now. And that's a huge number, considering we were at 0 last year, mid of last year. Right? So we've gone from 0 to 120 in the space of a year. And not only the number good, but the innovation is also really, really good. You can see across a wide variety of products, whether that be twisting screens, whether that be folding screens, whether that be detachable screens, or just touching clamshells. The innovation has really been unprecedented for us from a PC industry standpoint. That's really good. But it's not just convertibles. We've introduced a lot of smartphones in the market. We started with Lava in India. But let me talk you through some of these others as well. This is India, this is Europe with Orange, right? Motorola is launched, and this is the Razr I, which is launched in Latin America, it's launched in Western Europe. We've got another Motorola SKU here, ZTE, and then Lenovo, China phones, right? And then Megaphone should be, Megaphone is here, and this was in Russia. So we're looking at markets which are big, which have huge opportunities, and we're introducing phones with the local players in these markets. And in some cases, global brands as well, like Motorola. And like I said, we are very hopeful that in the coming year, in 2030, we're going to have phones in Southeast Asia as well. Very, very hopeful. So that's what we've done in 2012. Right? We've set the table for 2013 from a phone standpoint, from a tablet standpoint. We've got great innovation in ultrabooks. We've got great innovation in non-ultrabooks as well, from an Atom standpoint. Okay. And we're going to expand on all of that and provide a very comprehensive product portfolio to consumers and the enterprise going forward. Let's talk about a few of the big trends. There's lots of trends, but we've boiled it down to just a few. On the consumer side, two things. Number one, I think Asian innovation, no question. And I think you'll see in your fact trends as well, I think there's a couple of things that we've talked about, local innovation for local consumption. And I'll give you a couple of examples of that that's happened this year. The second, of course, is touch and what's beyond touch. From a business standpoint, we're talking about number one, is big enterprise, whether that be clients, and BYOD, of course, being a big trend, but client tablets in the enterprise framework. And then government policy around broadband plans, which are happening through the region. There's some conversations happening, there's some unannounced plans by some governments right now, We're working very closely with them, but we need to see more traction on that. And I think when we do, we're going to see massive progress in this region. Let's talk about Asian innovation first. Don't flip the slide now. By this, I don't just mean the rise of the Asian brands, right? Increasingly, you see Lenovo, Asus, and Acer have a global footprint. That's been true for a little while. It's not a new trend. That's happening anyway. What I mean by this really is two things. Number one is local innovation from a software standpoint. Right? Increasingly, there may be software applications that are more relevant for Malaysian consumers or Indonesian consumers or bigger countries in Southeast Asia. There are many, many more software houses that are developing applications on Windows 8 platforms, on Android platforms, and on iOS platforms. Gone are the days when big companies used to develop software for PCs and for tablets and smartphones. So the big company developing breakthrough innovation and applications, that model is breaking down. Decentralized innovation is happening. Right? And it could be 2 people sitting in a room, or it could be 100 people sitting in a room. But that decentralized innovation is well and alive, and it's going to increase in momentum. And I think in the coming year with Windows 8, with iOS, and with Android, we're going to see a lot more of that locally in some of our countries, because the expertise is there, and people have grown up with some of these platforms, and it's going to become a lot easier. So that's one example. The other example of Asian innovation is some of these devices that we're seeing today. Many of our Asia-Pacific consumers, Southeast Asia consumers, like smaller devices. Right? We like smaller screens, we like more portability because we're always moving or we're stuck in traffic in many cases. And we like smaller devices, we like full-day battery life. Western Europe in many cases has preferred bigger screens, right? From a laptop standpoint or even from a desktop standpoint. What you're seeing here, you're seeing a lot more smaller screens, and that is a recognition of our customers, our OEM customers saying, hey, there is a growing consumer movement in Asia Pacific, in Southeast Asia, and we've got to deliver innovation not just at the top of the price points, but we've got to deliver innovation through the system price point stack. And that's why you're seeing even something like Touch, which is an expensive feature to build into a notebook, available even in the $450 to $500 space. Right? It's a comparatively new feature. And typically the PC industry has taken new features and put it at the top and waterfalled down price points later. But now you're seeing that happen through the price tag at the beginning itself. And I think that's a recognition of the rise of Asian innovation and the rise of the voice of the Asian consumer. Those are two very key examples for me, which make me believe that this is a big trend. In terms of touch, now you can go to the next slide. If I can go to one after this. I think touch is it. I think touch is going to be everywhere. Our internal research has shown this. I think we're seeing existing momentum in the marketplace for tablets from a touch standpoint. It's an intuitive interface, and we are committed to bringing touch very, very hard through our Ultrabook pipeline and through the non-Ultrabook pipeline. No question. We think touch is going to be it. But we're not just stopping at touch, right? In fact, some of these devices give you the ability to do touch and keyboard interface. Right? So you can pick whichever works best for you. If you want to work in metro mode with touch, then that's fine. But if you want to work in productivity mode and you want to type, then that's fine too. But going forward, I think we're doing a lot more than that. In fact, I don't know if we're talking about that here or we're talking about that later. Gesture. Is it the next slide? Yeah. So going forward, we're looking at a few technologies that offer new input methods. And this is not something that's going to be 100% attach rate on all notebooks anytime soon. But these are new innovations that are coming to PCs. Let me give you two examples. One is voice and one is gesture. Right? Voice is the ability to just speak to my notebook and basically say, post something on Facebook, for example. Post that I'm presenting in Malaysia to Facebook. It will recognize that I'm saying that and it will post it to Facebook automatically, as an example. Or I could be, my notebook could be Bluetooth enabled. It could connect to my car which has Bluetooth, and I could say, hey, play music from so-and-so artist. And it automatically links to the car speakers and plays the music. Because I have a lot of music on my PC, I should be able to connect to my car seamlessly and play that. Those are the kinds of capabilities that are coming up. From a gesture standpoint, now think about this. Right now you have to touch the screen for everything, right? Or you have to use the keyboard. With the right technology, you can have finger gesture or hand gesture and have the computer recognize what you want to do. So much like movies in the past, science fiction movies in the past, this is actually becoming reality. In fact, we have great progress in labs already being made. We've introduced a software development kit for this, called the Perceptual Computing Software Development Kit. And application developers can write applications for this SDK, using this SDK for these features. And be incorporated in the future as part of our go-to-market plans, for example. So this could be things like, zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, or maybe you want to play Angry Birds and you don't want to touch the screen and you just pull the bird back. That might be something. Lots of cool features coming up. So the idea here is not for us to imagine everything that can be done with gesture or voice. The idea is to create capabilities and let the ISPs, the software vendors, and the application developers write applications that take advantage of these features. Right? And there's many other things coming. Facial analysis, for example. Instead of using login information for a commercial website, it looks at your face and says, okay, I know this is over there. Right? And then it's going to ask you for a password. It may ask you for second factor authentication, whatever it is. So very easy features that help you work easily in a seamless fashion. So these are new features coming beyond just touch. I think touch is going to go mainstream in 2013 across all devices. But beyond touch, we're working on a whole host of capabilities that are coming in the future. Enterprise. Go ahead. So one is tablets. Well, you can say, I'm using tablets today in the enterprise environment. What's the issue? And the issue is one of security vulnerability and the inability of the IT administrator to actually administer these devices. There's a big BYOD trend happening, but there's no visibility for an IT administrator to manage these devices, much like they would manage a corporate asset today. Right? Maintenance is difficult, patches are more than impossible because there's different operating systems, and there's no security is let's say lackluster on these devices. Right? And right now we have a lot of workarounds. There are decent workarounds, but we continue to see security vulnerabilities in the corporate network. Last year we had a whole host of hacking issues into the enterprise network. Right? We continue to see denial of service type attacks all over the place. As people are doing more and more online commerce on their tablets or phones, which are not part of the IT network, they use more and more private information on these devices. And that's going to become a big issue if we're not able to provide enterprise class tablets and phones to the marketplace. We're going to start showing some enterprise-ready tablets, and that includes apps and software that help enterprises. These could be apps that we use today. These could be apps in the future that we're not using today in a Windows context. They might just be in an Android or iOS context. So I think there's going to be a big crossover of applications that provide the same capabilities across multiple operating systems. And of course, warranties and build quality and all those things that matter to enterprise will also come. But I do think, by the way, even though companies might start saying, hey, we need to drive more enterprise-ready tablets into the enterprise, I think as an ecosystem, if we can drive the right innovation, I think people will end up buying some of these detachable devices where I can have a keyboard and a screen together, and I have the best of both worlds. It's an IT administered device. It has all the security and manageability features. It's a no compromise PC performance type device. I think if we do that right, this will get minimized. But we're going to do both. We'll let the market sort it out. Go ahead. The other big trend in front of us is just the amount of data that's getting generated. Right? Every time we're taking pictures with our smartphones or whatever other device, taking videos, uploading it onto a web, there's just this massive explosion of data. And that's the phenomenon called big data. Right? What do we do with all this data that we're generating? In the past, storage used to be very expensive. Storage is becoming much cheaper. So we can store a lot more than we used to in the past. But when you store a lot more, you have to organize that data as well. So I think this coming year is going to be a big breakthrough year for big data. And we've already made some announcements in this space in terms of acquisitions and investments. And I think we're going to see data centers and cloud build out in terms of being able to organize data more effectively. And that's a big trend for us in the coming year. This creates huge opportunities. Anytime you can store this level of data, you can store a lot of information about consumers, right? And about what they prefer. Let me give you a brief example. And this is not about storing people's identity. That's not what it's about. It's about being able to create trends of consumer preference. So let's say you go to a mall that has a digital sign, right? And maybe males want to connect or click on the top right corner more so than the bottom left corner, for whatever reason. Then I might have male clothing ads in the top right section of the screen, not on the bottom left. And I might have goods that appeal to female consumers in the bottom left section, because that's where they tend to go 90% of the time. Right? I can't get that type of analytical information unless I'm storing a lot of information and I'm analyzing that information. That's really what's behind big data. I think you're going to start seeing a lot more of that. Mining of data for trends, which makes for much more effective advertising, makes for much more effective marketing. And that's just a signage example. I think that's what's coming. We are far ahead versus some of the other Southeast Asian countries. Some of the other countries are just catching up on some of this, on national broadband lines. But I think there will be more coming up in the coming year. And once you do that, I think you see development also catch up, because productivity improves with the use of technology. The World Bank released a report, I think in 2010, for every 10% improvement in internet infrastructure, internet penetration, there's a 1.38% increase in GDP. So there's a very clear correlation between internet penetration and GDP growth. And all countries in our region have realized this. They see Singapore and Malaysia being way far ahead of everybody else, so there's a big catch-up I think that's going to happen with everybody else. Whether that be Indonesia, whether that be Vietnam, Thailand, whether it's Philippines, Myanmar. Right? So these economies are going to invest in IT infrastructure, much like they invest in roads and sanitation and power and everything else. It is a foundational capability, and I think these governments recognize that and will invest in it. So what's coming from us in the next year? The notebook's definitely getting reinvented. Touch, we hope, and we will definitely work with the industry ecosystem to drive touch attach rate all the way as high as possible. That's what we're going to do. That's what we're focused on doing. But it's not just touch. As we've spoken about, it's more than just touch. We're going to be providing all-day battery life. And think about this. This is all-day battery life when you're using it on a PC. Right? This is not an easy thing to do. So we have to provide you with better performance than you're getting today on PCs. And we have to provide you with the ability to work on it all day without a charge. And if you go into standby, we'd like to be able to provide you with multiple weeks of standby. So that if you go on vacation and come back, you don't come back home to a dead laptop. Or if you take a flight, you don't end up with a dead laptop on the other end of the flight. These are things that we all face in terms of frustrations with the PCs today. We want to eliminate all that, and we're going to do that next time. Lots of new form factors and lots of new capabilities because of sensors and facial recognition. So GPS and gyroscopes and accelerometers, facial recognition, we've talked about gesture, we've talked about voice. All of these things are coming. So big year for innovation for us. And it's not just Ultrabook, it's the notebook that's being reinvented. So this is not just an Ultrabook statement. Okay? Next slide. Now I talked to you about delivering performance as well as power. Right? It's not an easy thing to do. The reason we're able to do this is because of manufacturing technology. And because we can use that manufacturing technology for high volume. Right? We ship hundreds of millions of CPUs a year. Having manufacturing technology is one thing, being able to convert that to high volume is quite another. And we're going to do this in very high volume. So we're going to take what is today 17 watts, what used to be 35 watts, and move it to basically 15 watts. That's the entire lineup with 4th Gen 4. Okay? We're introducing a new lineup at about 10 watts, 8 to 10 watts. So think about these detachable form factors. Some of these things are slightly fatter than you would like them as a consumer. Right? The minute you take this 10 watt part, you're going to have a very thin detachable. But this is going to be a full experience PC, no compromise in terms of performance. That's the big deal. You're not sacrificing one for the other. And of course, Atom lineup at 2 watts. So we're going to have complete coverage from a power standpoint. Yeah? And again, no compromise on performance. Big deal. Big deal. And that's coming with 4th Gen 4. So we do a lot of things here, but maybe you guys can't see this, but this says greater than 10 days of standby power. Right? Connected standby. And I think this is going to be well north of 10 days to be because this is still saying connected standby, which means it can connect to the internet, it can refresh your email and you go back to sleep. In that mode, it lasts more than 10 days, which is a big deal. Again, no compromise on performance. That's why it's, I think, revolutionary. And when you compare it to 2011, then it's 20x better in terms of power management. But it's going to be much better on performance as well. Again, not to repeat myself, but that and is a very, very important piece of the story. Next slide. Ultrabooks, we've talked about it. You guys can see it. Just imagine whatever you can on top of this. Right? Imagine voice, imagine gesture, imagine thinner form factors, imagine better materials, imagine smaller images, whatever you can imagine, all those things are coming to the forefront because we are making that technology available from a foundational standpoint. Cloud, our vision of what comprises the cloud hasn't changed. Right? We believe in an open architecture, we believe that people should be able to plug and play different components into the cloud, and that hasn't changed. We're going to stay consistent with that. But specific to next year, I've got this one more slide for you. We'll go ahead to the next slide. Big data is going to drive this, no question. We have no doubt in our mind. We've already talked about some of the means by which this is going to happen. Solutions are getting easier and easier to use from data storage and analysis standpoint. This is what's going to drive this. And we think that that's going to happen on top of an open cloud infrastructure. That is consistent with our vision for 2050. Right? Consumerization has already happened, no question. Big data is the next big trend in this space. And that will be something that I think will have to deal with. Because we are all storing more and more data on the backend servers. Make sense? So that is kind of my summary of how I see the world. I'm going to hand it over to Prakash and then I think we're going to have Q&A.
All right. So, based on what they mentioned, right? In my mind, I break it up into 3 or 4 big areas on how these trends translate back to Malaysia. Right? So number 1 is consumer. Number 2 is businesses at large. Number 3 is education and digital literacy. And number 4 is local innovation. Right? And these 4 elements have relevance in terms of what happens in the market and also in terms of what value Intel is adding locally within Malaysia. Right? So let me touch on consumer first. So when you look at consumer, almost every data that you look at for Malaysia tells us that Malaysian consumers are very savvy with technology. They adopt technology pretty quickly, whether it includes ultrabooks, touch devices that are coming through, smartphones. I see many of you having big screen smartphones, right? It's a pretty consistent trend when I go meet consumers as well. So as you look at all of these devices, we firmly believe that the new devices, form factors, all that they talk about, will absolutely get consumed in various shapes and forms by Malaysian consumers. In 2012, Lee Home was our ambassador for Ultrabooks. You saw us do quite a bit of programs with him, with his name. We had investment in Ultrabook City in Laoya, which many of you, I'm sure, have seen. And moving forward, we will try and extend that effort to make it easier for consumers to understand technology. Let me explain. With all of these devices that you see here, right, the form factors are going to be very, very different. There will be tablets, there will be ultrabooks, there will be notebooks, there will be sliders, there will be detachable, and there will be many others. So if you look at one of the Dell designs, it's called Ferris wheel. The whole screen rotates. Your yoga, which flips 180 degrees. How does consumer make sense out of what to buy for what usage? Right? That is going to be one of our key areas of investment, to explain to consumers on how they can invest in the right platform. So that's number 1. Number 2, on businesses at large. Right? If you look at Southeast Asia as a market, half billion people growing, majority of them are youth, a lot of them are consuming content, translating to big data, needs for people to serve that data from data centers. So if you look at Malaysia, our data also suggests that all elements of data center build out included, which is infrastructure, land, power costs, server infrastructure and networking, and manpower included. If you look at the complete stack, Malaysia is fairly competitive across many other parts of the world, not only in Southeast Asian countries, but all parts of the world, to be a sustainable data center model from a country point of view. So the immediate opportunity that comes along is in Southeast Asia. So if the data center build out happens here, you can definitely reduce the latency for data getting served up across the Southeast Asian country. So we believe there is a strong trend that data center build out in Malaysia is going to happen. But at the same time, we also feel that the IP transit costs and the power costs in general could definitely be looked at to make Malaysia more competitive in that segment. And if you do, the line of sight on massive growth on infrastructure over here is very, very clear. The second part of the business element is what we are doing to prime some of the industry areas which are showing significant growth. So they talked about 15 million devices, all connected to internet, all having compute horsepower, and all getting, from a PC standpoint. There's a whole range of non-PC devices, which we call embedded, right? We have talked about it in the past as well. Whether it's point of sale, whether it's digital signage, like we mentioned about intelligent digital signages. It would be home energy management systems. There could be digital set-top boxes, right? All of these areas are growing very, very fast. And there's an opportunity for the local players to really make a difference in terms of building the whole solution. So a few months back, we announced under Digital Malaysia, growing the embedded industry as an initiative along with the government. One of the big highlights for 2012. Moving forward, we will make sure that that engagement as a technology consultant to the government or technical advisor for embedded industry carries on and expands critical projects which really make use of embedded technology and provide local players the opportunity to integrate that solution. For small size companies, but if they can provide unique solutions, they can not only compete locally, but they can also compete within Southeast Asia and globally. So a big charter for us to drive or accelerate local innovation as part of the embedded initiative. The third element is education and digital literacy. So 20 and 29 million people in Malaysia. Government has a charter of Vision 2020, which is a developed nation by 2020. We believe a very strong intersect on that, or very essential element in making that happen, is all the citizens being digitally literate. They can understand technology, they can use technology, they can use it in a way that makes them more productive. So a year back, we announced a formal plan to roll out, along with Telecom Malaysia's community broadband centers, 165, 170 odd broadband centers, a program called Easy Steps, which means the program will explain the basics of technology to citizens. And you would see us expand this further in 2013 to span both consumers and SMEs. The reason for that is our data against this, a large portion of our SME landscape, which is about 450,000 registered, 2.5 million unregistered companies, especially the small and micro, do not know how to use technology for their benefit. Right? And this initiative, along with various stakeholders that we're working through right now, will help them get there. Will help them adopt technology and use it or make a difference or be as competitive as they can be within Southeast Asia, across other SMEs, or even globally. Big part. And the second aspect is education in general. We have contributed hugely towards nation building over the last 10 plus years. We have trained 80,000 teachers. Many of you already know that using Intel Teach. Our focus with the national blueprint on education being announced by the Ministry of Education is to constantly support them So there were inputs provided during the national blueprint formulation. You know that every year we do science and engineering fair. We did that too this time. Many of you participated in the Skype video conference. A couple of the students, we are very proud to say, won awards at a global stage, right? And then we are also wanting to expand the scope of really education transformation, which is called out in the blueprint as well. Education transformation is all about all the elements, key elements coming together at the same time. So whether it's policy, where they have the right elements of policy in place to make a difference, whether it's teaching professional development, because without great teachers, you can't have great students, right? And then you have ICT, which gets talked about a lot, saying that I invest in technology, I will get a lot more benefit. But if you don't have other elements in play or in place, you may not get the best benefit of technology. Then you've got research and evaluation. So in the end, you always have, many of you would have heard, Malaysia has dropped in terms of PISA scores, right? PISA score is a critical determinant of the quality of education. The research and evaluation plays a key part on how do we keep those PISA scores as high as possible, because other countries are competing for the same space of talent, right? And for us to be getting to Vision 2020 and developed nation, the education blueprint and real transformation on the ground is absolutely critical, right? So we would continue to pursue that philosophy. And the last part is also something that many of you would know, but many of you may not be correlating from all the announcements that happen over a period of time. So Inter-Malaysia trade is 9,500 people in Penang. You know when we started in Malaysia, 40 years back. We are celebrating 40 years this year. And we started with a handful of people, right? Our CEO, Othlini, was in town to celebrate 40 years in Penang, and he was personally talking about his experiences. And Andy Grove was talking to him about when Penang factory was just set up. Right? And from there on, we've come to 9,500 people. But the interesting point about the 9,500 people, they are not only into manufacturing. They are very high value add design. So a lot of our atom design that they talk about in tablets, in smartphones, in PCs traditionally, in networks, right, gets designed in Malaysia. So we won the Product Excellence Award that Deputy Prime Minister gave a couple of months back to our Penang facility. That was for building atom in Malaysia. And everybody there is local Malaysian. So a huge component of our contribution to the economy is getting local talent and harnessing that local talent to do cutting edge stuff. There are also investments that we are making in shared services, right? A huge part of our company as well. So all of these are just not simply manufacturing as we may be perceived to be. It's not beyond manufacturing. It's very high end cutting edge stuff. So in the end, there is one portion of market being high growth, which we strongly believe in that Malaysia is intersecting with technologies untouched, which absolutely will thrive in Malaysia because of consumers' appetite for technology. Investing in digital literacy and education significantly differentiate Malaysia in a long-term manner versus the rest of the country. But in the end, it's also about really investing in local talent development. And Intel as a company has done both of them really well. Right? And 2013 presents a great opportunity for us to build on the learnings and make it even better. So that's all I have.